There are moments in life when the oil runs low, when the jar feels empty, when hope itself seems to be running out. For one woman in the ancient city of Zarephath, this wasn't just a feeling. It was her reality. A famine had swept through the land. No rain, no crops, no food, just survival. And in a small, quiet home, a widow stood at her table scraping the bottom of a flour jar. Just enough for one final meal. One last piece of bread. For herself and her son. This was meant to be their goodbye meal. Their final act before the famine swallowed them too. But the stage was being set for a miracle. Because when your hands are empty, God's hands are not. Cut to a lone traveler walking into the city gates. At that very moment, a stranger approached Zarephath. Tired, dusty, but carrying a divine assignment. His name was Elijah, the prophet of God. He looked at the woman and said something strange. "Would you bring me a little water? And while you're at it, bring me a piece of bread." Bread. Bread. The widow almost laughed. Or cried. "Widow, as surely as the Lord lives, I don't have bread, only a handful of flour. And a little oil. I'm gathering sticks to prepare a final meal for my son and me. And then we will die." Her honesty hangs in the air. But Elijah speaks again. Calm, confident, carrying the voice of God. "Do not be afraid. Go home and do as you've said. But first make me a small loaf. For this is what the Lord says. The jar of flour will not run dry. And the jug of oil will not run empty, until the Lord sends rain on the land. Give from your lack. Give from your last. Give before you see the miracle." This wasn't a request. It was a test. Faith. Of trust. Of surrender. And the widow chose to trust. The widow returned home. She touched the jar. Still almost empty. She poured the oil. Still only a little. But she obeyed. She baked the bread. She brought it to the prophet. And something happened. When she went back to her kitchen, the flour jar wasn't empty. When she looked at the oil jug, it wasn't dry. Day after day, morning after morning, as famine continued around them, her jars kept giving, kept pouring, kept providing. Her last had become God's overflow. Where there should have been lack, there was abundance. Where there should have been death, there was life. And in the middle of a starving land, one home, one widow, one child, experienced supernatural supply. The story of the widow of Zarephath is more than history. It's a whisper to every soul standing in lack today. God didn't ask the widow for what she didn't have. He asked for what she held in her hands, no matter how small. Because miracles often begin where math ends, where logic fails, where resources run out. Her breakthrough didn't start with full jars. Started with faith. Faith to give. Faith to trust. Faith to believe that if she released what she had, God would release what he had. And he did. Abundantly. Overflowingly. Miraculously. Narrator closing. So if you feel like you're down to your last strength, your last idea, your last ounce of hope, remember the woman of Zarephath. She gave her last, and met God's overflow, and her story can become yours. Fade to black.